the elephant in the room, right, is the type of racing, right? Did we like what we saw? Did we not? When we were kind of gathering before we started hit play on or record for this podcast, our producer Travis is like, I'm pretty new to this, and the race seemed fine to me, I guess. So there is always another side of the coin, right? We're going to be the guys, since we've been in the sport for such a long time, to compare it to a different time, right? But we are in a different time now, right? It's, I looked back and I try to be as well educated as I could because I knew this was going to be a topic. I looked at, lap times over the last 10 to 5 years, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and then now, and to see is what we're feeling a real thing? The lack of passing, the ability to pass. Is tire fall off not what it used to be? The very short answer is yes, without a doubt. Tire fall off is half of what it used to be. And in a time where you had lap time fall off that was twice as much, and you had cars that were different because they were manufactured and built by the race teams themselves, there was more overtaking because there was more variables, different drivers, different cars. It just all added up to more lap time variation, right? When a car would hit it, you could come back from a speeding penalty, blow through the field, and you could make it happen. And in the next gen era, it seems as though we talk about more and more execution. I say it with my 11 team all the time, right? It's execution. When you get in the lead, control the race, don't lose it. And if you don't lose it and you just execute a nice, smooth day, you don't make any mistakes, have good restarts, we will find ourselves in a position to win most times. But the short answer is the passing was more difficult, without a doubt. As we saw, whoever got out up front, and this is not just a Martinsville thing. Like at Bristol, whoever took off to lead a stage would lead every lap and win the stage. Ryan Preece went from what we thought was the most dominant car. You put him in the back of the pack, and he was one of the first guys to get lapped on the lead lap. Joe Logano, I battled with him to lap him many times. A few times. The 19 was in the absolute way all race. I mean, he had been 30th, and just he caught the caution. He didn't pit, I guess, and caught the caution, and then put himself up in the front. So I'm wondering, were their cars really that bad, or are they just in air, right? So it's hard to say which one it is. When you put a good car in the back, does it just become? And when you put a car up front, does it just become great? I don't even know, and it's very hard to tell. But certainly, it's frustrating because as drivers, it's taken our skill set out of our hands, right? I know what I need to do if I want to get a little bit more lap time. I know techniques that I can make around that racetrack to either set up passes or gain a little bit of lap time, depending on how long the run's going to be. I can abuse my tires for a certain amount of time, and I know that, and I can use that skill set to make passes. Now it is, you just put me behind someone who's never run the racetrack before, and I won't be able to pass them. It's just that difficult. And so, I looked at a couple of guys' quotes after the race, and I saw it was very familiar. Obviously, the Stewart Haas guys who were dominant early, put them in the back. They didn't do anything.
Yep.
The 5 car was pretty good. Not stellar, but he was okay. He was pretty good. And then, it worked out to where the front cars, us included, stayed out because we had 30 laps on our tires. And we've only fell back to 4th. It was crazy. I expected to go 5 years ago. I would have finished a lap down. It would have been that that big of a detriment to stay out on old tires. But, this is a problem I really, really wish we could make it a forefront of our testing. I know that we're trying the aero package. At this point, I don't know if it's the aero package or not. I think it's a grip horsepower problem. I'll say that because I remember doing tests about 10 to 12 years ago when we were running 900 horsepower, at 950 really. We were up there. And they kept playing around with tapered spacers. Like, all right, we're going to cut the horsepower down at whatever track we were testing at. And I noticed for every 50 horsepower that they took out of the car, because we kept trying these different plates, and they kept choking the horsepower down more and more and more. The long run was 0.2 faster every time they started taking horsepower away. So if the fall off was 1.5 seconds at any given racetrack that we were testing at, if they took 100 horsepower out, the long run was only a second of fall off. So the cars didn't slow down nearly as much because you don't have the horsepower to burn the tires off. So that's been 300 horsepower ago. So it measures up to what we're seeing while we're watching the race, and what we're feeling while we're driving is that I'm running the same damn times, or if not faster than the guy in brand new tires right behind me. It's just because we don't have the horsepower to get our cars to spin the tires. So we've made a conscious effort to not only take horsepower away, but also take RPM away. And we talked about this as drivers in our with NASCAR just a few weeks ago at Atlanta. And the initiative behind this that has come from NASCAR is that, they're trying to get the engine bills lower. For whatever reason, they want the engine bills to be lower. And that's really hurting competition right now. We've got to identify that it is hurting our on-track product. And is it worth it to try to get $1 million less engine bill? Are you willing to give up, what we're giving up for our on-track product? I just don't think that it's worth it. And by the way, the engine bills have not gone down since we were running 900 horsepower. They're the same. So I don't know where we're going. And I know I've talked about this before, but I really, 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 really am pleading with NASCAR, who I guarantee you is listening to this. You got to give us some horsepower back, or RPM, or something to create the passing like we need to, because it's really a challenge, and it's taken driver skill sets away. And so I don't know the right answer. If they added 100 horsepower overnight, which I don't even know if they could. I listened to Jeff Gluck's podcast, is a great one, by the way, the teardown after the race. And he says that Dustin Long spoke to Jeff Andrews, the Hendrick Motorsports engine, or I believe he's the president there. I could be wrong. But Jeff Andrews, a high-up executive at Hendrick Motorsports, he says, if we press the button of go right now, that next year we're going to have 100 more horsepower. He's like, it's possible. We can do it. But the parts, I know that Andy Graves at Toyota said the same thing. Getting the parts that we need to make our engines have more horsepower would take time. Now, again, you could just change the spacer in the car, and it takes about 15 minutes, and we could have more horsepower. But the engine builders, build the engine around that tapered spacer. So they would, he said we would have to dial it and say it right now. If we wanted more horsepower next year, you would have to make the call right now, because they can't get the parts in 6 to 12 months. That's his timeline of switching to a more horsepower package. But I really wish we would consider it. I know we keep talking about it, and I guarantee you from the driver's perspective, we will keep talking about this if this is the road that we're going to continue to go down, because we're really hurting our on-track product with this initiative to lower RPMs, lower horsepower. It's not good. in my opinion. And I only speak that because I've been doing this for 18 years and I've been through lots of generations of cars, lots of generations of engines. And this is by far the toughest that it's not just tough, it's impossible. You can't make the moves that you need to make. There was one pass for the lead today when first and second place were on the same tire strategy, and that was when I passed Chase Briscoe for the lead. Now, it took me 60 to 70 laps on tires for me to actually pass him, but that was the only lead change today where it wasn't a tire advantage, disadvantage. Like Larson at the end, right? Well, he was going up against cars with 30, 40 laps on his tires, so it made him look like he was super strong, which maybe he dialed it in that last run. But there's got to be – we used to really talk about all the green flag passes that the Cup Series had. I haven't heard anyone say that in the NextGen era.